Part 50. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 491. The Unobserver group has more than a dozen members, but only 3 people have real say at this time. The US representative, the Chinese representative and the Russian representative. China has always opposed all forms of terrorism and is willing to contribute our strength in anti-terrorism, the Chinese representative said expressionlessly. At present, a Chinese compatriot is likely to be trapped in the war zone. I hope your government can take concrete actions. We have authorized the combatants of the peacekeeping force to accept the deployment of your military. The Major General wanted to strangle this shady guy to death. You did contribute your strength. Last night, you sent hundreds of technicians into our oil fields. In the name of helping Iraq to extract oil, you took away 52% of the shares of the oil fields. As for the little strength of China in the peacekeeping force, damn it, there is only 1 platoon in total. What can these people do? China's troops are indeed better than the Iraqi government forces, but the number is too small. Besides, this involves diplomatic issues. If they are sent to the front line, Iraq will have to provide all-round protection. The reconnaissance plane has confirmed that the La settlement has been occupied by IS, which means that the Chinese who got into trouble first is likely still in the war zone and fell into the hands of IS. In the end, China's intention is to force the Iraqi government to solve the problem by itself and send troops to rescue people. The US government will never compromise with terrorists. We will not give a penny of ransom. The American representative looked indignant, slammed his fist on the table, and said to the Iraqi Major General, "Don't worry, I have submitted a report to the President. The President will do his best to persuade Congress to agree to send troops to Iraq again. But before that, I hope you can do your best to rescue our journalists." The other representatives almost laughed when they heard this. Who doesn't know how cumbersome the American procedures are, especially for major events involving sending troops, which require collective discussion by the Senate and the House of Representatives, and more than 2/3 of the consent, from proposal, review, voting, to the final approval of the President. Even if everything goes well, it will take at least 2 or 3 months, plus the preparation of the army. God, can the US Army enter Iraq in half a year? Moreover, the anti-war sentiment in the United States is serious, and the government has already made up its mind not to send large-scale troops directly to the big quagmire of Iraq. Therefore, every time the American representative said yes, I will ask Mr. President to let Congress discuss it, everyone knew that his real meaning was actually no. The Major General looked at the Russian representative with a stern face. Needless to say, your country is also prepared to stand idly by. General, I don't understand why you say that. The Russian representative's face was like a blank board in mahjong, expressionless, but his tone was tough. Our president ordered the Air Force yesterday, and an airborne team is flying to the scene of the incident to search for Ms. Ludmila. Of course, if conditions permit, they will also rescue the 2 American journalists. And our bombers and missiles are ready. Once the hostages are rescued, they will immediately cover the mountainous areas occupied by IS. Isn't this enough help? Enough, the Iraqi Major General yelled, and it was not known whether he was saying that the help given by Russia was enough or that he was angry with several representatives. The remaining representatives of the observation group looked like they had nothing to do with it. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom are also worried about Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. That who has time to care about Iraq's mess? Everyone, the Russian paratroopers have entered the designated location and have started a fierce battle with IS. Another message came. What? The Russian representative's expression changed slightly. Why did our paratroopers engage in a firefight with IS? I want to talk to the squad commander. The 76th Russian Airborne Division has been writing a chapter of victory and glory since its birth. It is the most popular unit in Russia and is regarded as the elite of the army and the pride of the nation. From the day he joined this ace unit, Captain Ivanov has regarded the honor of a soldier as his life. When the president gave the task of rescuing his compatriots to their squad, Ivanov accepted it without hesitation despite knowing that the mission was extremely dangerous. As a glorious national soldier, Ivanov is not afraid of death, or in other words, between dying gloriously for the country and living in shame, he will choose the former without hesitation. But he didn't expect that this mission was wrong from the beginning. There were major errors in the intelligence of the general staff and the Iraqi government. When they landed near the La settlement, they found that the entire settlement had been occupied by IS. Not only the settlement, but also the nearby mountains were full of IS troops. Their team of paratroopers was like a fool. From the moment they jumped, they were already locked by IS troops. After landing, a fierce battle ensued. After eliminating more than a dozen IS militants patrolling nearby, Ivanov's team was completely exposed. A large number of IS troops surrounded them from all directions. Fight! Fight! Fight non-stop! As the most elite special airborne soldiers, Ivanov's team fought their way out of the IS encirclement, and attracted hundreds of IS combat troops with a squad of troops. But they were still outnumbered and surrounded by IS on a small hillside. "Captain, there are enemies everywhere. What should we do?" a paratrooper asked loudly. Before he finished speaking, a rocket with a tail flame exploded 10 meters away, and the paratrooper who was asking questions was directly knocked out by the airflow. "Get down," a comrade roared wildly and threw Ivanov from behind. Gravel and soil fell from the sky like raindrops, Ivanov's ears were buzzing, and a hot stream came from his face. Ivanov turned his head and saw that the shrapnel had left a huge gap in his comrade's neck, and blood spurted out of the wound like a fountain. "Damn IS, there was no time to be sad," Ivanov shouted. "Vasily! How many of us are there?" The sign Alman Vasily did not respond. Ivanov pulled Vasily's arm, his hand suddenly felt light, and he pulled out half of his bloody arm from the temporary trench. Vasily's body had been blown away. Ding, calling Commander Ivanov, the signalman's arm was still tightly holding the communicator. "I'm Ivanov. I'm Ivanov," Ivanov was furious. "Ivanov, this is the command center, how are you doing?" Ivanov looked up at the makeshift position. In fact, it was not a position at all. The airborne soldiers were scattered in several naturally formed bunkers and fighting on their own. "We are surrounded, and the losses are heavy. The brothers are almost wiped out." "Damn, there is at least a battalion of his militants nearby," Ivanov yelled at him. "Ivanov, the president orders you to abandon the mission and break through as much as possible." The voice on the other end of the communicator paused. "If you can't break through, the president authorizes you to surrender." In the explosion, a shell fell into a bunker 5 meters away from him. The airborne soldiers in the bunker didn't even groan, and they exploded into a bloody mist. Ivanov's face showed a look of determination. "Sir, can I speak directly to the president?" Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 492. The call between frontline commander Ivanov and the Russian representative rang out clearly in the hall of the Iraqi Ministry of Defense. From the large screen in the command hall and several satellite images, it can be seen that the small area where Ivanov is located is in the core area of his large force, even though the main force of his is currently defending the government outside the mountain. The army is attacking, but just relying on a few airborne troops to break out is tantamount to fantasy. Ivanov's request was immediately transferred to Moscow via a dedicated line, and a few seconds later, a calm middle-aged male voice sounded in the hall. "Ivanov, I am Vladimir." The dignitaries present were all very familiar with this voice. It was the current Russian president with the nickname Iron Fist who came from the KGB, the Soviet secret agency. "Mr. President, are you using a secret line?" the Russian representative broke out in a cold sweat. "This president is too unrestrained in his actions. How can he have a public phone call in front of so many dignitaries from various countries? Why keep it secret?" Will the conversation between the president and the soldiers tarnish the glory of Russia? Vladimir asked quickly, and then said without pause, Ivanov, you have already having fulfilled your duty as a soldier, I now authorize you to surrender. The Russian army needs excellent soldiers like you, and the mother of Russia needs her son. On the other end of the phone, war was raging. No, Your Excellency, President, Ivanov's voice sounded very weak amidst the sound of gunfire and shell explosions, but his tone was unusually firm. My grandfather died in the battle on the outskirts of Stalingrad, and my father died in the battle I died in Chechnya, my brothers died beside me, and now it's my turn. There was a loud bang, annihilating Ivanov's voice, and Vladimir asked loudly, Ivanov, Ivanov, are you still alive? Your ancestors have shed their blood for the country, I now order you to surrender immediately. Damn, oh, Mr. President, I didn't mean you, bah. Ivanov on the other end of the phone spat out bloody spit, looked at the last comrade not far away who had half of his head blown off by a bullet, and yelled into the intercom, there is no time. Your Excellency, the country does not need its surrendered soldiers, I ask you to give the order to fire on my location. There are at least 100 elements here and let them be buried with Russian soldiers. There was silence in the hall for a moment, and only Ivanov's roar could be heard, Mr. President, I would rather be killed by my own people's artillery fire. Give the order. Your Excellency, please give the order quickly. If I die, they will withdraw. From this distance, it only takes one covering strike to kill them, Novanov yelled at the top of his lungs. Vladimir said solemnly, order the nearest armed forces to fire on Russia's heroes. Send those damn terrorists to hell. Oh no, there are still our reporters there, the American representative shouted. The Chinese representative also frowned. Russia's blanket attack might also hurt Chinese businessmen. In order to eliminate terrorists, every country should be prepared to pay a price. Russia's heroes have set an example for you, Vladimir said coldly. Mr. President's words were conveyed almost simultaneously to the Russian military base closest to Iraq. Two long-range missiles slowly emerged from the underground bunker and began to adjust their directions according to the set coordinates. Long live the 76th Division! Long live the Russian Air Force! Long live Russia! Just when the entire hall was covered with a sad atmosphere, and only Ivanov's roar was left, the gunshots on the other end of the intercom suddenly rang out loudly. Ivanov's voice changed its tone, oh, God, what did I see? Wait, Mr. President, don't fire, don't fire. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. What is this guy doing, joking? A second ago, he was pleading passionately to die for his country, but he actually ordered the artillery fire, and he gave up again? Could it be that he was just pretending to be a hero? Vladimir, who was far away in Moscow, almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. This call was clearly heard by everyone in the Iraqi Ministry of Defense. Even half of the Russian military received the news immediately. Vladimir also ordered the presidential office to record the call and prepare to broadcast it nationwide. Used to unite people's hearts and inspire morale. Unexpectedly, this guy was actually pretending? He is a coward at heart. Damn it! Vladimir punched the table hard. Even if this coward doesn't die, he will be punished when he comes back. This simply discredits the Russian military and makes it a big stink in front of the whole world. Even he himself was treated like a clown. A hero 1 second, turned into a bear the next second, Russia will become the laughing stock of the whole world. Ivanov's voice rang out hurriedly, Mr. President, there are reinforcements. Oh, they seem to be Iraqi soldiers. When did they become so capable? Oh, Mr. President, don't fire, they have already rushed up the hillside. Who are you? I am the 76th in Russia. The gunshots on the other end of the intercom gradually weakened, and there was a burst of noise, followed by a young man's voice. Hello everyone, I am Su Ming, a young entrepreneur from Yangchuan City, China, and a member of the Chinese Communist Party. We are now in Iraq. Well, anyway, I don't know what the Broken Mountain is, and I will broadcast live for you. Oh, this beautiful girl is called Ludmila. You have just met these two black and white demons. They are both American journalist friends. I don't know what the soldier is called. I heard from Ludmila that he is from the 76th Division of the Russian Ace Force. He is really fierce. A dozen people held back hundreds of his people. Well, Shenyan, are you there? The signal here is very poor. Can you see clearly in the live broadcast room? I have to leave quickly. The largest force seems to have discovered us. Amir, let's leave quickly. Oh, by the way, I would like to use this live broadcast as a birthday gift for our party. The people in front of the two big screens reacted differently. In front of the big screen in the war room of the Iraqi Ministry of Defense, a group of politicians looked at each other. They could all hear that this was Chinese, but few people might understand it. The Chinese representative's mouth was long enough to fit an egg. What happened? Why did the missing Chinese businessman suddenly appear? From what he said, he not only saved the Russian soldier, but also saved two American hostages. The party's birthday? Oh, it's coming soon. This gift is very important. Thousands of miles away, the big screen in the office of the director of Yangchuan Zoo burst into warm cheers, and the staff of the zoo hugged each other in cheers. This guy scared me to death. Nangongyan finally couldn't hold back anymore, and tears were pouring down. This screen can see the battle scene, but the signal is very poor, blurry, and intermittent, and only Su Ming can be seen making a V sign in front of the camera. In addition to these two big screens, there are thousands of people in China watching this battlefield live broadcast at this time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 493. This live broadcast hosted by Daowin Entertainment Company started within an hour. After Su Ming officially became a divine envoy, the High Priest Ali I respectfully handed back his and Ludmila's mobile phones. After getting the mobile phone, Ludmila's first reaction was to notify the Iraqi government and Moran International to send people to rescue them. However, Su Ming thought about it and decided not to do it for the time being. The mountains are now in a state of porridge, and even if the government is willing to send people to rescue them, they may not be able to rescue them. The key is that my current situation may seem dangerous, but if you think about it carefully, it's actually the opposite. The most direct threat, the Lure people, have completely become their most loyal supporters. Not only are they unable to harm themselves, but they will protect themselves with their lives. In the military kettle that you carry with you, there is more than half a bottle of special royal jelly, which can continuously replenish your mental power. In the wild, there are all kinds of animals, large and small, everywhere. As long as your mental power is not exhausted, in a sense, he said that he was the king of the wild, and it was others who should worry. There is also the water bear's powerful survivability energy storage ball. With this thing, as long as he is not directly hit by a cannonball, he will be injured at most and it will be difficult to die. Since the location is an IS defense area, there are IS people everywhere. In order to avoid accidental damage, the possibility of the opponent using heavy artillery bombardment is very small. In this case, it seems that there is no need to call for rescue, but there is much that can be done. So Su Ming just reported to the zoo that it was safe. The person in charge of answering the phone was Anna Shen. He didn't have time to say anything more. After a few simple explanations, Su Ming's mind was wide open again. Since he had a mobile phone, he might as well do a live broadcast. There are currently many types of live broadcasts in China, and the industry is developing extremely rapidly. Singing, dancing, and playing games have gradually developed into being able to broadcast everything from eating and sleeping to racing and shopping. Even things like catching car shakes and eating light bulbs have become popular on the live broadcast platform. The reason is that it brings excitement to the audience. Freshness. Speaking of excitement, what could be more exciting than Battlefield live broadcast? No matter how hard domestic anchors work, no one dares to go to a war zone to live broadcast. Anna Shen was shocked by Su Ming's plan. She thought to herself that this old classmate and boss was so generous. He was trapped in a firefighting battlefield. Instead of thinking about how to escape, he actually wanted to conduct a live broadcast. It's too late to explain. I'll give you half an hour to promote it and then start the live broadcast. Su Ming finished speaking in a hurry and hung up the phone quickly. Therefore, Daowen Yuki Weibo and the online live broadcast platform released the most eye-catching scrolling message at the same time: live broadcast with life. The director of the park appeared in Iraq, and the war was live broadcast. 2 flowers bloomed, one on each branch, and Shenyan's side began to promote in full swing. Su Ming, on his side, had already climbed up the hillside under the protection of 2 platoons of Lu'er soldiers, looking down at the battlefield below. It's too dangerous, Ludmila frowned. The mercenaries were brave, but that didn't mean they would die. In the situation in front of them, a small group of low people would die if they joined. Although the distance from their position to the cave where the hostages were held was not far, there was dense forest along the way. Looking through the telescope, people were flickering in the dense forest, and there were several large mesh bunkers used to guard against air attacks. If you want to get close to the cave where the hostages are held, you have to fight all the way there. Even if you don't consider is reinforcements from other areas, the enemies on this road alone are more than 2 platoons of Lu'ers can deal with. Not only are they far outnumbered, not as good, and the opponent has a complete bunker. If you rush over like this, you will be a living target and die. According to normal thinking, Ludmila was certainly right. Even the most elite troops in the world would not choose to rush in to save people. Su Ming did not explain too much to Ludmila, but turned back to look at Emil with questioning eyes. This group of low people kept calling themselves the messengers of God, but Su Ming wanted to see how much weight he, the messenger of God, had in their hearts when they were really in a life-or-death situation. Can they carry out their orders unconditionally as they claim to do, even if they let them die? Emil puffed up his chest without hesitation and said a few words. Ludmila helplessly translated. He said that the people of La are the sharp swords in the hands of the gods. Broken in the battle against the devil is their greatest glory, will return to the kingdom of God after death, this group of religious lunatics. You can also work part-time as a poet. Su Ming almost laughed at their serious looks. It would be too rude to laugh in this situation. He suppressed his laughter and patted Emil on the shoulder. Don't worry, young man, you guys, the envoy of God will not let you die in vain, come with me. After saying that, the first cat doubled up and rushed down the hillside. Emil roared, and without thinking, he quickly followed up with 2 platoons of low people. His eyes were all red. There was no way for the divine envoy to rush to the front. If the divine envoy was injured, they would all become the sinners of Lu'er. Fu, CK. A bunch of lunatics, Ludmila cursed bitterly, loaded the bullet with a click, rolled over and rolled off the hillside, and hurriedly caught up. Su Ming took the lead and rushed to the front, his spiritual power overwhelming. He was like a humanoid radar. With him as the center, all the animals in the cone-shaped area within a radius of several hundred meters in front started to move. A bird on the treetops flapped its wings and soared into the sky, swooping down and attacking the exposed eyes of humans. Poisonous snakes lurking in the dead leaves quietly passed through the gaps in the bunkers and quietly approached the soldiers who were waiting for battle. Groups of poisonous mosquitoes, poisonous spiders, and poisonous scorpions that could bite people to death were organized by an invisible force and pounced on humans in groups. Ah! Woo woo! Bang bang bang! After entering the woods, Emil and Ludmila were surprised to find that there was no exchange of fire as they imagined. Suddenly, shrill screams rang out all around the woods. As far as the eye could see, soldiers screamed and fell from the trees, jumped out of the bunkers in fear, and rolled on the ground with crazy screams. Some people fired randomly, and the bullets tore the bodies of their colleagues nearby, spurting out large balls of blood. As they walked along, the whole forest seemed to have suddenly turned into hell. What's going on? Ludmila was shocked. Emil and a group of lure people looked at each other, and finally their eyes fell on Su-ming at the same time. They changed from surprise to fanatical worship. Even though they were still on the battlefield, dozens of people all lay on the ground, prostrating themselves and shouting loudly at Su-ming. The messenger of God brought the power of God to punish those who disrespected God and sent the evil devils to the painful hell. Ludmila held her forehead. They think this is your masterpiece. Su-ming laughed. Of course it is my masterpiece, brothers, follow your messenger of God and rush up to kill these devils. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 494. Crushing, Su-ming was like a large human-shaped magnetic field. Wherever he passed, the soldiers in front jumped out of the bunker screaming and rolling all over the ground. They became living targets. The two platoons of low people following Su-ming, he advanced rapidly without any need to aim. He raised his hand to hit any members who were still moving in the way. With the help of the soul-possessing ability, Su-ming was not worried about anyone slipping through the net and hiding in the dark to make a cold shot. All the secret whistles had died silently. It was not a long journey without any delay. They ran almost non-stop all the way. The 7 or 8 members guarding the entrance of the cave heard a series of gunshots in the forest, and their accomplices let out shrill screams. They still didn't understand what happened. When it happened, I saw a large group of lures rushing out with guns. Surf the gun and don't kill. Su-ming shouted loudly, then pulled the trigger in his hand, hitting his head with a hail of bullets. The two militants who stood there stupidly had large balls of blood blooming on their chests, and they fell down. Ludmila could understand Chinese. She looked at Su-ming as if she was a ghost, and then shot without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, all the armed men guarding outside the cave fell into a pool of blood. Su-ming took the lead and strode into the cave. Hearing the gunfire, the black and white evil spirits huddled in the corner of the cave, looking out in horror with their eyes wide open. They saw a flash of light and shadow at the entrance of the cave, and the Oriental man who emerged from the ground before appeared in front of them with a spring breeze on his face. My God, Nikki's jaw almost dropped. Could this Oriental young man know the legendary Oriental magic of flying to the sky and escaping to the earth? It just emerged from the ground, and now it's falling from the sky. At the same time, Su-ming's cell phone rang, and Anna Shen was ready to live broadcast and could officially start the live broadcast. You too, let me say hello to you all, Su-ming smiled and pointed the camera at the black and white Zhuangxia. Although there was only half an hour of publicity, the live broadcast was blurry and intermittent due to the signal. However, the live broadcast room was still overcrowded, and the zoo server was almost on the verge of collapse and could explode at any time. The previous half hour was not only used for publicity, but also for notifying Nangongyan and the zoo employees, asking relevant people to rush to the zoo as soon as possible to watch the live broadcast. It was another way for Su-ming to report to them that he was safe. Anna Shen, who was in charge of technology, was almost exhausted. That's right, we can no longer just let people into the live broadcast platform, the server can't support it. From now on, you should be optimistic about the background data and release one after another. Hey, Mr. Li from Somao, hello, I'm Shen Yan. I've asked someone to synchronize the live broadcast signal to your line. What? Your server can't stand it anymore. There are CEOs from several platforms. I'll call you and hope that it will be broadcast. Okay, no problem, as long as it can be diverted, it will be a win-win situation for everyone. Hello? Municipal Government Secretariat. Yes, this is the live video sent back by our President Suk from Iraq. It is not a show. What? The provincial leaders are also watching. Promote positive energy. Leader, I can't guarantee that. I can only say that based on what I know about Mr. Su, our Mr. Su will never do anything to embarrass the country. As for positive energy, Mr. Su is at the front, fighting against terrorist organizations that threaten the world, instead of sitting in the office. Drinking tea, I don't have time to promote any positive energy. If you have any questions, the Secretariat can go directly to Mr. Su. Anna Shen rolled his eyes and hung up the phone directly. The live broadcast room has been so busy that from the background, even the simplest messages are stuck, and the animations for giving gifts are just one meal at a time, so I have no choice but to turn off the special effects of the gifts. I'll go. Isn't this really filming? It screamed so much. I hummed so hard that my intestines came out. It's so disgusting. No one dared to look at it, it was too scary. Is this war? It's so scary. We should never fight. Are those Arabs the little brothers of the garden director? Why do they all obey the garden director's orders? The foreign girl is so beautiful, her breasts are so big. The director is too fierce and charges forward again. The picture was shaky and it was impossible to see the true panoramic view of the battlefield. The roar of guns and artillery was heard constantly, dirt and gravel were flying around, and broken arms and limbs flashed in front of the camera. After rescuing the hostages, Su Ming accidentally discovered a Russian soldier trapped on a hillside not far away during his retreat. He simply did not stop and rushed up with the Lo people in the same manner. This is a tough battle and a chaotic battle. There was a fierce battle on the hillside. Compared to the dense forest, the number of deadly animals on the hillside was much smaller. For Su Ming's side, the difficulty of the battle was greatly increased. The Is side was also confused. Not only was the surrounded Russian airborne soldier Ivanov not aware of what was happening at first, but even people on the Is side were baffled. The level of command and tactics and the ratio of scientific and technological equipment on the Is side are far inferior to those of modern countries such as the United States. Communication are quite backward. Su Ming was too fast to rescue the hostages before, and the Is leader in charge did not even understand what was happening. What? The hostages have been rescued. The war situation is ever changing. Even if the Americans are here today, they can't seize the position within a few minutes. The Is militants who were besieging the paratroopers on the hillside were shot in the ass from behind by Su Ming and his men without even receiving any prompts. People with faith are terrible. Su Ming showed the power of the messenger of God, which was exactly the same as described in the scriptures. He brought the demons that ravaged the world into a painful hell. The young men of the Luo tribe were more determined to believe in the existence of God and believed that they were the warriors of the true God. They were fearless and launched attacks while howling. The momentum of playing with life was even more frightening than that of Is, which started with human bombs in terrorist activities. Although there were not many animals on the hillside, there were still some. A large number of air forces played a role of interference, and a small number of venomous snakes secretly killed the opponent's temporary firepower points. In Su Ming's field of vision, it seemed that a giant panoramic radar appeared. All the personnel, subordinates, and equipment of Is appeared in his field of vision in real time through the soul attaching ability. The soldiers of the two platoons followed Su Ming like wolves and tigers, and seemed to be able to predict the future. They avoided the direction of the opponent's strongest firepower and specifically found weak points to break through one by one. Like a sharp knife in the hands of a butcher, they kept dismembering the bull smoothly from the gaps between the tendons and bones. Every time they successfully killed a firepower point and broke through a small layer of defense, the Lur people's admiration for Su Ming deepened. And Ludmila, who had received professional military training, was secretly shocked during the battle. She had never expected that this Oriental guy would have such a high command talent, and his grasp of the battle situation was simply unbelievable. The Lur people worshipped the illusory god of fire. If there were gods on the battlefield, in the mind of the mercenary Ludmila, Su Ming was about to become the god of the battlefield. "Damn guy, you are so powerful, why do you still spend money to hire us?" Ludmila felt mixed emotions. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 495. When Su Ming rushed up the hillside and took the intercom from Ivanov, the scene in the Iraqi war room appeared. Wait a minute. President Vladimir, who was far away in Moscow, finally recovered from his shock and was about to say something, but Ivanov's urgent voice came from the intercom again. "Mr. President, I am following Mr. Su's troops from China to transfer." "Oh, Miss Ludmila is also in the team. Greetings. The battle situation is urgent, is surrounding us again. We will report to you after we find a safe place." Vladimir was stunned for a moment, and his tone returned to calm. "Okay, convey my gratitude to Mr. Su, and wish you all the best." After that, the intercom was temporarily disconnected, and Vladimir's voice sounded in the command room: "Give orders to the nearest Russian troops to temporarily stop missile launches and keep an eye on their dynamics at any time. Make sure that Russian heroes and Russian friends leave the war zone safely." "Yes, Mr. President," the Russian representative said quickly. When the Chinese representative heard this, a look of surprise flashed across his face. "The Russian hero refers to Ivanov, who fired at me." Although Ivanov did not die for justice due to various reasons, it was not because he was afraid of death, but because things had taken a turn for the better. If Su Ming had not appeared, Ivanov would have died in the artillery fire, so he definitely deserves the title of Russian hero. However, the friend of Russia refers to Su Ming. If an ordinary Russian said this, it would naturally have no weight, but the person who said this was the President of Russia. Representatives of several countries heard this clearly. It is even possible that many ordinary people in China heard it through live broadcast. An ordinary Chinese citizen is called a friend of Russia by the Russian president. This weight is not ordinary, and must be reported to the superiors immediately. Since Su Ming and the Le suddenly appeared in the center of the IS position, a central explosion occurred, causing the IS defense line to loosen in a short period of time. The Iraqi government forces finally seized the opportunity and tore a piece of meat from IS. Although they did not recapture the entire mountain area, they barely managed to share the same strength with IS and did not let the entire mountain area fall into the control of IS. 2 days later, Su Ming, several thousand Le people, 2 American journalists, and the Russian hero, Ivanov, appeared on the territory of the Iraqi government forces. A colonel of the government army did not dare to delay at all and immediately sent a battalion of troops to escort everyone back to the capital Baghdad. This battalion of troops was more like a courtesy to show respect. The number of Le people who could fight exceeded this number. "I hope that some secrets can be hidden in our stomachs forever." On the way back, Su Ming sat in the compartment of a military vehicle and said to Ludmila. Yesterday afternoon, when they joined the Le army and broke out of the mountain together, Emil caught a senior IS official and asked Su Ming how to deal with him. Ludmila recognized him at a glance. He was the 5th person in the IS country, a real big fish. Su Ming pondered for a moment, took the 5th person to a remote place to chat for a while, and finally let him go. Although IS is a terrorist organization, it has been able to establish a country and exist until now, and has become stronger and stronger under the condemnation of the whole world. There are many deep-seated reasons. In terms of military strength, Any of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council can easily use long-range weapons to plow every inch of land in the entire IS country, but no country has done so. Although these big countries are under the guise of anti-terrorism, in fact, no one has really fought with IS. Only Iraq and Syria have no choice. IS has established a country on their territory, directly threatening the regimes of these 2 countries. The water is too deep here. Since the world's major powers are not irreconcilable with IS, why should Su Ming be the first bird to come out? On the battlefield, it's either you or I, there's nothing you can do about it. Now, his own war has ended, and Su Ming doesn't want to have a deadly feud with IS. So this number 5 figure became a bridge for Su Ming to secretly ease the tension with IS. The price of letting him go back is that IS will no longer harass the Lo people and Su Ming himself. Of course, the Lo people have to withdraw from the mountainous area. After Su Ming became a divine messenger, the Lo people behaved loyally. During the charge, several soldiers, led by Amir, kept blocking Su Ming with their bodies. Su Ming was willing to help them if he could consider it for them. As for his own safety, Su Ming was not too worried. It was almost impossible for Arab terrorists to enter China to retaliate against him. Even if they could pass the heavy security checks, they could not escape the eyes of animals. In addition to Amir and several La soldiers, the only one who knew about this was Ludmila, who acted as an interpreter. Ludmila shrugged, "Of course, I'm not an idiot. Would I risk being assassinated by IS to do something that has no benefit to me at all? Besides, there is nothing wrong with using the 5th person in IS to exchange for a way out." "That's good." Su Ming smiled, "You are welcome to visit China in the future. My future wife and I will warmly entertain you. You are also welcome to visit Russia, but don't bring your wife," Ludmila said. Nothing was said along the way. After returning to Baghdad, the Iraqi government held a grand celebration. In fact, until now, even many Iraqi officials have not figured out what this local war is all about. It was fought so vigorously and ended so quietly. But this is not important. What is important is that the result of this war is worth publicizing. With the support of international righteous countries, the Iraqi government defeated the major conspiracy of IS. The first successful rescue of hostages kidnapped by IS, strictly speaking, was the missing Chinese businessman, who brought the brave Lur people and Moran international mercenaries to rescue Western hostages and Russian soldiers. Chinese businessmen, Moran international mercenaries, Russian heroic paratroopers, and rescued hostages suddenly became the focus of the whole of Iraq, and the eyes of the world were all on this war-torn city. In addition to war correspondents and representatives from various countries, the current president of Iraq even attended the celebration in person and awarded Su Ming a strange medal, which was said to be the highest medal of honor in Iraq. At the end of the celebration, the Russian representative knocked on the wine glass with a silver spoon, and after the audience quieted down and looked at him, he said with a smile, "Ladies and gentlemen, President Vladimir entrusted me to extend an invitation to Mr. Su Ming, a friend of the Russian people, hoping that he can go to Moscow with Captain Ivanov, oh no, now Lieutenant Colonel Ivanov, and Miss Ludmila to accept the award." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 496. Ever since President Vladimir directly said the words "Friends of Russia" during the phone call that day, which caused quite a shock, no one has mentioned this topic again in the past few days, which makes people feel like Mr. President it was as if he had said the wrong thing in excitement. No one expected that the Russian representative would mention it again in public without informing anyone. Not only did he mention it, he also added the word "people," which made it more formal. He even invited Su Ming to Moscow to receive the award. The face of the representative from China immediately darkened. The Yankees are not a thing, and the old man is not a good bird. He is full of bad tricks. What is he doing? The Chinese government has not awarded awards yet. When will it be their turn to award the Chinese people? Is this to show the people of the world and the Chinese people how much Russia values its heroes? In fact, the Chinese government was already discussing awarding Su Ming a commendation, but was planning to wait until he returned to China before announcing it. Russia took the lead and immediately made China very passive. The political dignitaries and representatives from various countries present were all talented people. How could they not know the game involved? For a moment, their eyes turned to Su Ming to see how this young man would take the move. Su Ming was also stunned. His first reaction was quite proud, thinking that I had become famous overseas. However, when he saw many playful eyes looking at him, Su Ming immediately understood that this was not as simple as it seemed. The water is deep. Su Ming's mind was spinning rapidly, and he quickly thought of words. He coughed, smiled, and said, "Thank you, President Vladimir, for your kindness, and thank you very much, Mr. Representative. Personally, of course I am willing to promote the two sides. However, I want to make it clear in advance that I am not just an ordinary Chinese citizen, but also a party member." Party member? What does this have to do with party members? The Russian representative was stunned. It's not like he's asking you to treason against the country and the party. Why are you using party members as an excuse at this time? However, this word brought back many distant memories for him. More than 30 years ago, he was also a party member. The Huaxia representative did not expect that Su Ming would say such a thing. There are more party members. There are more than 80 million in the country. Why do you say this? Everyone. Su Ming nodded to everyone around him and strode up to the rostrum. He naturally pushed the Russian ambassador aside, cleared his throat, looked at the audience, and spoke slowly with a deep look on his face. Our party is a party with a complete organizational program and strict discipline. As a party member, I am no longer an individual. On the day I joined the party, I solemnly swore an oath in front of the national flag. Although there are many party members, I have forgotten the original oath, but I still keep it firmly in my heart. I swear to support the party's program. As Su Ming's solemn words rang out in the celebration hall, everyone present was shocked. This guy actually started to recite the oath of joining the party in a serious manner in front of representatives from various countries and reporters from all over the world. All of a sudden, a celebration banquet hosted by the Iraqi government and attended by major United Nations countries suddenly turned into a party membership ceremony for the Chinese party. Su Ming was completely unaware of all the strange looks below him, and continued to read out the oath of joining the party loudly with a sacred face. If another party flag appeared at this time, it would be regarded as the United Nations foreigners collectively joining the Chinese party. The Chinese officials present put down their wine glasses one after another, walked out of the crowd, stood under the cupboard, and chanted loudly along with Su Ming's voice. I swear to implement the party's decisions and strictly abide by the party's discipline. Secrets of the Conservative Party: loyalty to the party, active work. Fight for communism for life and be ready to sacrifice everything for the party and the people. This is great. It's a big red propaganda for the whole world. Representatives from various countries present had their own concerns, but they could not step forward to interrupt the Chinese people's oath. Fortunately, the oath was not too long and was finished quickly. The birthday of our party is coming soon. As a party member, this is my tribute to the party's birthday. Mr. Representative of Russia, as you and everyone heard, as a party member, I must obey the party's discipline, so can you accept your honor? For the award of honors from the president of the country, I must report to the higher level organization and wait for approval. It took a lot of strength for Su Ming to keep a straight face and not laugh. Don't try to drag me into the political game between your countries. Let's leave this ball to the superior organization. According to the organizational structure, Su Ming's superior organization is the Yang Chuanzu Party Committee, and Party Secretary Tong's sister is his party relations leader. Of course, this is only theoretical. Now, both in terms of actual work and the impact of this incident, the extent is not something Sister Tong can decide. That night, the video of the celebration appeared in front of the leaders of several major countries. Oh, cunning Chinese people, I'm sure this is a red propaganda. What a pity, why is this hero not us Americans? A red entrepreneur, rescued American journalists and Russian airborne troops, and is famous all over the world. How much shock will this pledge of loyalty to the party have in the West? This pledge will have a better effect than the propaganda department spending several years to carry out cultural invasion. Mr. President, we must be wary of this invisible red attack. The Chief of Staff said at the White House Presidential Staff meeting. In the Kremlin, after watching this video, President Vladimir was silent for a long time. Suddenly he shrugged and said to the staff in front of him, "This is a very interesting person. Do you believe what he says?" "Mr. President, I don't believe every word he said, but I have to admire his way of solving problems," a senior staff member said. If there were more party members like this in the Soviet Union, it might not have disintegrated so early. The president tapped the table with his fingers. "I am really looking forward to meeting him now. In a garden somewhere in the capital." "Chief, the report from Yangchuan City has been directly sent to the higher level. The ambassador to Iraq is asking whether to approve Su Ming to go to Russia for the award." "Xiao Wang, what do you think will be the impact of Su Ming's speech if it is broadcast nationwide?" The chief did not answer directly, but asked back. Secretary Wang thought for a few seconds and said slowly, "There are at least several aspects. First, it will enhance the image of our party among the people at home and even in the world. Second, it will gather the morale of the people at home. Third, it will help to rectify the discipline within the party. Fourth." As expected of a secretary of a national leader, he analyzed 5 or 6 meanings in just a few seconds. The chief smiled and nodded, interrupting the secretary's words. "We should cherish, protect, cultivate, and trust outstanding young comrades. Reply to Yangchuan City and Iraq to approve Comrade Su Ming's trip to Russia, and at the same time step up the study of domestic reward methods for Comrade Su Ming. We can't let President Vladimir worry about how to reward our own comrades, that would be too unreasonable." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 497. Huaxia Embassy in Iraq. Comrade Su Ming, the head of the capital, is very satisfied with your performance in Iraq and has given a high evaluation. He has approved you to go to Moscow to meet with President Vladimir. The person who talked to Su Ming was still the embassy civil servant. Su Ming learned from Zhao Yun's channel that the Chinese ambassador to Iraq is about to be replaced, and the next ambassador is the gentle civil servant in front of him. In other words, this person is the plenipotentiary representative of the Chinese side in Iraq in the future. Su Ming had expected this result. Not only Su Ming, but the whole world knows that since the Russian president personally issued an invitation, the Chinese government has no reason to refuse. The same is true in reverse. If the Chinese government issues an invitation to a Russian who has helped the Chinese military, the Russian government will not refuse. This is the most basic diplomatic etiquette, unless the two countries are ready to turn against each other. The result is the same, but the process is very particular. Knowing that the leader will approve it does not mean that the subordinate can agree without asking for instructions or reporting. Decision-making power is the authority that leaders cannot touch. Su Ming made that statement at the celebration party and did not agree to Russia without authorization, which is equivalent to expressing to the whole world that he firmly supports the leadership of the party. The party has absolute authority in China. If there is no such statement, even if Su Ming went to Russia and became famous in a short time, it would leave a very bad impression on the highest power in China. If an employee of the zoo trades with other units without Su Ming's consent, Su Ming will inevitably have some thoughts in his mind. The original words of the leader are to give full trust to young comrades, So all matters of this trip are up to you, Comrade Su. If you need accompanying personnel and service personnel, they will be dispatched from the country as soon as possible, the civil servant said. Forget about the accompanying personnel. I can go with a few friends. Su Ming thought for a while and smiled. After all, I am a private person this time. If I bring domestic staff, the nature will be different. Haha, no wonder the chief values you. Comrade Su, you are very thoughtful. The civil servant also laughed. The Chinese side said that they could provide accompanying personnel because they took into account the care for Su Ming. To put it bluntly, it was to support him and make him look good. However, if the government accompanying personnel were brought, the reception and negotiation between the two sides would be similar to the relationship between countries, and there would be many inconveniences. Su Ming took the initiative to propose not to have accompanying personnel, which saved unnecessary trouble for both countries. Do you have any other requests for this trip? Asked the civil servant. There is indeed something. I hope the government can consider it. The key may be that I need your help, Su Ming said to the civil servant. Me? Please tell me, I will do my best. The civil servant was slightly stunned, thinking that you will fly to Moscow tomorrow and then return to China directly. Whether you are in business or politics in the future, you will have a bright future. Why do you need me, an official stationed in Iraq, to help you? Could it be the animals he bought? That's not right. They have been transferred to the transport plane and sent to Yangchuan City. There is a small episode about animals. After the Iraqi government learned that Su Ming's original purpose of coming to Iraq was to buy or protect animals, it immediately mobilized hundreds of animals from several zoos across the country and gave them to him together with the batch he bought before. According to the words of the Iraqi government, Mr. Su is also a friend of the Iraqi people. Iraq is too poor and has nothing good to give him. These animals are a little gift from the Iraqi people to Mr. Su. Bah! The civil servant thought with contempt, Russia is a world power, and it's fine to say that Su Ming is a friend of Russia, but you Iraqis are really shameless. You immediately take advantage of the situation and copy others' words. Can you do something new? In any case, the original purpose of this trip, buying animals, was successfully completed. The quantity exceeded the quota, and basically no money was spent. The Iraqi government was not stingy at last, and returned the money Su Ming had used to buy animals to the Yangchuan Zoo through donations. It's about those love people. Su Ming smiled and said. Oh, right, right. The civil servant suddenly realized that in the previous battle, the Le tribe in Iraq seemed to be directly under Su Ming's command, and they are still stationed in a temporary resettlement near Baghdad. What's going on with them? The civil servant asked in confusion. Even the Iraqi government can't command them. Hey, I'm going to report this to the organization. Su Ming slapped his forehead. Well, you tell me, and I will convey it truthfully, the civil servant said seriously. Sooner or later, the organization will know about this matter. Instead of letting the higher UPS investigate, it's better to take the initiative to say it. Of course, how to say it is very particular, and the results are also completely different. Comrade Su Ming, the big liar, started to fool around again. You know about reincarnated soul boys, right? Su Ming winked mysteriously at the civil servant, wanting to say something but stopping himself. The civil servant's eyes lit up. I know that every Banshan living Buddha is a reincarnated soul boy. This is the tradition of many religions. They believe. As he spoke, he suddenly realized and stared at Su Ming, saying in astonishment, could it be that the Lure people think you are there? They all answered quickly. Su Ming was amused in his heart, but said with a straight face, hey, who said it wasn't? I was not putting out a fire on the plane, but they insisted that I was the reincarnation of the messenger of the god of fire, and they also gave me a lot of weird religious tests. I can't deny it. Religious tests are all based on idealism. They preconceptionally believe that you are the reincarnation of a divine messenger. No matter how you test, the results will develop in the direction they want, the civil servant nodded. Isn't that right? Su Ming looked troubled. We caught up. I led them to break out of the siege, and they were even more convinced that I was the envoy of God. Now I am in trouble, bringing such a big one drag bottle, thousands of people. What do you think I should do? After the final gathering of the entire Luo tribe, there were a total of 2,836 men, women, and children. Among them, there were about 800 young and strong men who could fight. They could barely make up a group. And all of them are armed. If we continue to ask them to join the Iraqi government as soldiers, they will definitely be unwilling to do so. To be honest, they all followed me from the firing line. There are only a few thousand Luo people left, and I don't want them to be cannon fodder anymore. Su Ming said. I understand, but you don't want them to. The civil servant suddenly realized something, raised his head suddenly, swallowed his saliva, stared at Su Ming, and said seriously, do you hope that these thousands of are you going back to China with me? If so, this would be great fun. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 498. China is a vast country with abundant resources. It can support tens of millions of people, not to mention a few thousand. There are many ethnic groups. There are 56 ethnic groups and 56 ethnic groups. It will not be a problem to add one more La ethnic group to make 57 ethnic groups. From a certain perspective that is not convenient to say, not only is there no problem, but one more ethnic group will enhance the prestige of our country. Don't think that the Chinese government always talks about non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries and peaceful development, as if China has never been a non-aggressive country. In fact, it's all nonsense. China has been an aggressive country since ancient times. Otherwise, where did the 56 ethnic groups come from? Thousands of years ago, China's territory was limited to a small area in the Yellow River Basin. Without aggression, attack, or expansion, where did the current 960 square kilometers of roosters come from? Throughout history, as long as China's national strength became slightly stronger, the first thing the monarchs had to do was to expand the territory. During the Tang, Song, Yuan, and Ming dynasties, China did not occupy the territories of other countries, but there was a premise: all nations came to pay tribute. The surrounding countries were honest like grandsons, and whoever disobeyed would be beaten, and even if they were obedient, they would be beaten occasionally, so as not to disobey in the future. So for thousands of years, the Chinese actually have a kind of big country thinking in their bones, and my ancestors were also rich. If one more nation can be absorbed into the Chinese family, it will be a shot of adrenaline for all citizens, and for the ruling party, it will also prove its governing ability, which is definitely a great achievement that can be boasted in history. In peacetime, it is difficult to expand the territory and incorporate a nation. The positive impact is enough to fight, but there are also hidden dangers. The Luo people clearly did not come for the Chinese government, but Su Ming's private armed forces. If we absorb them, we must respect their religious beliefs and living habits, and give them living space, right? Under the attention of the world, we can't send them to the frontier where no one lives, right? Let thousands of Luo people who only listen to Su Ming's command survive and multiply in the prosperous cities in the heart of China, and spread out. There will be no problem in 1 or 2 years, but after 10 or even several generations, this will be a very troublesome force. Even with Su Ming's current style and the control ability of the Chinese government, this Luo people will not become a wild horse that breaks free and causes too much trouble, but as a government, we must always consider this point. Even if this group of people can really be obedient citizens, it will be very troublesome to manage them. The civil servant certainly understands this truth. On the one hand, it is to absorb a new nation on the birthday of the party and leave a name in history; on the other hand, it is to bury a hidden danger in management. Weighing the two sides, his level has no power to make the decision. Xiao Su, wait a minute, I will ask the superior leader immediately. The civil servant left in a hurry and came back soon. When he came back, he looked very relaxed and laughed. Xiao Su, the head of the capital, was very happy to hear the news. He immediately gave instructions to absorb the Lure people into China. On the birthday of the party, we became 57 ethnic groups. There is no better gift than this. However, we can't take them all with us. Let 200 people go back with you and join the Chinese nationality. If there is enough time, I hope you can bring some Lure representatives to participate in the party founding celebration. 200 people, Su Ming smiled. 200 is 200, no matter how many people there are, he can't support them. At the beginning, Su Ming didn't expect the government to approve more than 200 people. He just wanted to bring dozens of people back. With these dozens of loyal Lure people, it would be much easier to do things. For example, when establishing the Daowin Security Department, the veterans recruited by Liaodong are pretty good, but the number is too small, and many confidential matters are more assured when handed over to the Lure people. Unexpectedly, they were given 200 people. These 200 people, living in the huge back mountain, can be completely self-sufficient, and can also develop the breeding and gardening industries. Deep in the back mountain is the vast Kinling Mountains, which has great potential. As for the remaining 2,000 Lo people, Su Ming never thought of bringing them back to the country. Although the motherland is good, the world is so vast, and it is obviously unwise to put all the eggs in one basket. As a time-tested party member, Su Ming certainly knows that the struggle has a cruel side, and it is not a bad thing to arrange a retreat for himself. These 2,000 people are the retreat he has set up. Back to the hotel, a hurried night, more than 10 o'clock in the evening, the two rescued reporters started their old business again, blocked Su Ming in the room, and interviewed for more than an hour. Just after falling asleep, Ludmila called Su Ming at more than 2 o'clock in the morning to invite him to go swimming. Su Ming thought about it, and finally took a cold shower, gave up the idea, and continued to sleep. No words all night. The next morning, Su Ming, Zhao Yun, Nangong Huang, and Ivanov, who was rescued, boarded a helicopter of the United Nations Peacekeeping Force and flew to the nearest Russian military airport, and boarded a military plane to Russia. The helicopter driver was a soldier of the Chinese Peacekeeping Force, a young man who might be 2 or 3 years older than Su Ming, but Su Ming always felt that the other party looked younger and more energetic. Could it be that I am old? Su Ming smiled helplessly in his heart. This is called once you enter the world, time rushes you. Compared to Su Ming's small civilian helicopter, the Apache armed helicopter of the Peacekeeping Force is simply a big monster. Su Ming is a little jealous. He wonders when he can get one to fly. Unfortunately, it seems that private ownership of this big thing is not allowed in China. A few people chatted on the way. Nangong Huang kept envying the cool uniforms of the Peacekeeping Force. Ivanov kept praising Su Ming's command level. The Chinese pilot said with some guilt that as a soldier, he let Su Ming, a civilian, take the lead. Young man, your mother will definitely not think so. Su Ming patted the pilot's shoulder and said with a smile in Chinese. If his superpowers can prevent Chinese mothers from losing their sons and Chinese daughters from losing their fathers, this deal is a good deal. The pilot had a complicated expression. Brother, fire a shot. Nangong Huang has been drooling over the M-203E single-barrel chain gun mounted on the Apache. He has been holding it in all the way. Seeing that he is about to arrive at the Russian airport, he can't help it. The pilot hesitated for a moment and looked back at Su Ming with an inquiring look. Fire one shot, and say that we encountered terrorists on the road. Su Ming grinned. He was also a man who was afraid of chaos in the world. The pilot was determined. Okay, if we violate the discipline, we will violate the discipline. Damn it, if we can't fight these ammunitions are useless. So let's fire one shot. Da-da-da-da-da. Nangong Huang was so excited that his whole body was twitching. He pressed the launch button with his own hands. The machine gun with a maximum firing rate of 1,000 rounds per minute made a violent roar, and bullets that could penetrate the weak parts of light armored vehicles and tanks poured out. Half a minute later, the 2- or 3-story high small earthen hill 50 meters away disappeared out of thin air, leaving only dust all over the sky. My God! Nangong Wang's mouth was long enough to fit an egg. Young man, the firepower Mr. Su faced in the mountains is even stronger than what you just saw, Ivanov said in Russian. So, we should cherish peace and stay away from war. Su Ming looked pretentious. A few minutes later, he arrived at the destination, boarded a Russian transport plane, and headed straight to Russia. The plane has arrived over the city of Pskov, please prepare for landing. President Vladimir did not receive Su Ming in the Kremlin, but changed the meeting place to the suburbs of Pskov. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 499. The outskirts of Pskov, the garrison of the 76th Russian Airborne Division. The 76th Airborne Division is the first elite force in Russia to become a professional army. It has 3 parachute regiments and a Guards Artillery Regiment. Ivanov served in the 104th Parachute Regiment. This ace unit has a long history. As early as during the Soviet Patriotic War, the division participated in the Battle of Odessa and the Crimean Campaign, and won the glorious title of Guards in the Battle of Stalingrad. Throughout the Patriotic War, more than 50 officers and soldiers of the division were awarded the highest honor of the Soviet Army, the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Su Ming met the iron-fisted President Vladimir in front of a row of military camps. From the TV, this president who came from a spy organization was cold and energetic, but when he saw the real person up close, Su Ming found that the president was actually an old man. Although his figure was still upright and his movements were full of strength, the white hair on his head and the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes betrayed his age. Vladimir, born in 1952, is over 60 years old this year and is a standard old man. Welcome home, Russian hero. President Vladimir did not greet Su Ming first, but strode to Ivanov in front of a large group of reporters from various countries and patted his shoulder vigorously. Su Ming's heart moved slightly. President Vladimir was not deliberately ignoring him. He only used this one action to win the loyalty of the army. Mr. President, it is my honor to serve the country. Ivanov's face flushed, his chest was high, and he saluted with a standard military salute. Welcome the hero home, it is also the honor of the president. Vladimir smiled and nodded at him, then turned his blue eyes to Su Ming. He stared at Su Ming for several seconds before smiling and saying, "Welcome to you too, Russian friend." "Oh, what a young friend, I envy you." Zhao Yun played the role of translator on the side. These old-school intellectuals did not learn English when they went to school, but Russian. But in any case, Su Ming now has a new understanding of Zhao Yun. God is not omnipotent, but Zhao Yun is omnipotent. Mr. President, youth is a stage that everyone will have. Although it is precious, it is not worth envying. However, it is admirable to always maintain a young heart and vigorous energy. The sedan chair was carried by everyone, and Su Ming smiled and flattered him. Mr. President raised his mouth and showed a helpless expression. I really want to be like an ordinary old man, go to the beach to watch the sunset and fish leisurely every day, but unfortunately the responsibility given by the country does not allow me to grow old. I look forward to tasting the salmon you caught with your own hands. Su Ming despised it in his heart. Just pretend, even if he goes to the beach, with this guy's virtue, he is probably going to party with a group of bikini Eastern European girls. Fishing is not his style at all. Maybe there will be a chance. One of Vladimir's followers whispered something in his ear. He looked a little serious and said, "Mr. Su, please follow me. Today is a very special day." Su Ming had known the other party's arrangement for a long time. At this time, he also restrained the smile on his face, and deliberately tidied up his actually very straight suit. He nodded and followed with a solemn look. Today's award ceremony was held on a special occasion in the suburbs of the city. In front of the 8-meter-high white monument, 2 rows of honor guards of the 76th Airborne Division stood solemnly. The foundation of the monument was a large St. George's cross with 84 names engraved on it. At the top of the monument was a large white dome, symbolizing a parachute. 84 metal candles were inserted in front of the monument, day and night. There has never been a lack of miracles in the history of war. Su Ming led 2 platoons to disrupt the glorious record of his positions. In the tide of history, it is nothing. In 2000, during the Chechen War, Lieutenant Colonel Marka of the 76th Airborne Division led his 6th Company of paratroopers in the Kurt Mountains, launching the largest disparity in strength between Russia and the enemy in history. 90 Russian boys, facing a 2,500-man rebel breakout, fought a fierce battle for a whole day and 2 nights, fighting to the death to defend their positions, killing 700 of the enemy and 84 of them. Shoot at me is by no means a unique spirit of sacrifice of soldiers of a certain nation. Any soldier with blood will burst out such a cry at the last moment. At the end of the battle, when the position was about to be lost, Lieutenant Colonel Marka roared, "Shoot at me." In recognition of their heroic spirit, 22 officers and soldiers were awarded the title of Russian Hero, and 69 soldiers and officers were awarded the Medal of Courage, of which 63 were posthumously awarded medals. Ivanov's father died in this battle, and the Lieutenant Colonel Marka who shouted "Fire at me" was the former commander of Ivanov's company. Under the lens of reporters from various countries, President Vladimir walked slowly to the monument with flowers in his hands and bowed to present flowers. As a representative of the army, Ivanov bowed with tears in his eyes and presented flowers. Su Ming looked serious and bowed with flowers. This brave country has never lacked heroes, and history will remember all those who have contributed to this country. On behalf of the Russian Military Committee, I promote Lieutenant Ivanov to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel, and award him the title of National Hero and the Medal of Courage. Vladimir walked up to Ivanov and said, "Congratulations, Lieutenant Colonel Ivanov, and thank you for everything you have done for this country." "It's my honor, long live Russia," Ivanov responded with his head held high. President Vladimir returned to the microphone and said, "There is a kind of friendship that is built with blood, and the Russian people will always remember this friendship. On behalf of the Russian government, I present Mr. Su Ming with the title of Friend of the Russian People." He paused, and after the flashlights gradually calmed down, he continued, "And, on behalf of the 76th Airborne Division, I present Mr. Su Ming with the division's flag and saber." After that, he took a light gold medal from the Guard of Honor and handed it to Su Ming with both hands. Since it was not a gift from a superior to a subordinate, but a gift between friends, the two sides were equal in etiquette. Lieutenant Colonel Ivanov brought 2 Guards of Honor from the 76th Division and presented the flag and saber to Su Ming. Although it is an airborne division, the 76th Division has retained the tradition of holding swords. The Cossack swords are world-class, and a line of retro-chord Russian characters is plated on the pure silver scabbard. Given to the most trusted comrades of the 76th Division. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 500. One of the disadvantages of dealing with the country is that you can receive a lot of fame but not much money. The most valuable thing was probably this handmade Cossack sword. Su Ming took it out and played with it secretly in the car on the way to the banquet restaurant. It was so sharp that it easily cut half of the wooden car refrigerator in the car without using much force. Don't destroy public property. Be careful of causing a diplomatic accident, Su Ming glared and took the knife back from Nangong Wang's hand. He looked at the edge of the knife carefully and didn't know how it was forged to be so sharp. In terms of the production technology of cold weapons, although China dare not say that it is the best in the world, it used to be top in the world. Unfortunately, the forging method has been almost completely lost in the years after liberation. The so-called retro swords on the market are basically the same goods. Brother-in-law, get me one. Nangong Wang's eyes were shining, and Zhao Yun's eyes were shining a little too. He was a collector, and this knife fell into his business scope. Seeing the two men staring at the sabers like weasels staring at chickens, Su Ming quickly sheathed the saber. The reception was held in the town hall. In the so-called reception banquet, the real guests were Su Ming and the three of them. After a brief interview with reporters and opening remarks, Su Ming greeted various parties as if it were a formality, and chatted with several military leaders of the 76th Airborne Division. The officials toasted one by one, and then there was nothing else to do. Russian government officials, officers of the 76th Airborne Division, and reporters were chatting with each other. Su Ming still had a serious matter to discuss with President Vladimir. The president was very pressed for time. He was going back to Moscow in 2 hours. Su Ming didn't want to talk nonsense with a bunch of officials who couldn't make the final decision. In the small conference room next to the banquet hall, a huge map of Russia hangs. In the upper left corner of the map, a small circle is drawn on the top of a peninsula bordering Finland. Compared with the entire Russian territory, the area of this small area is simply negligible. Su Ming was ready to let the remaining Lur people come to Russia and take root. Russia has a vast territory and is sparsely populated. Most of the land is uncultivated. The Lur people can rent a piece of land in Russia and even become Russian citizens. They can farm and hunt in Russia, pay taxes to the government, and live a peaceful life. The Kola Peninsula is a very nice place. There are rivers on the island, many lakes, and the natural environment is very pleasant. Of course, this is for us Russians. The Lur people from Iraq may take some time to adapt. The year-round temperature there is between 7 and 18 degrees, which may be a bit cold for Lur people at first. However, the resources on the peninsula are very rich. Several rivers on the island are important habitats for Atlantic salmon. Fishing and breeding can be developed. The Lur people can also learn from the Sami people on the island to domesticate reindeer, and the peninsula is facing the ocean. If you have enough funds, you can develop the peninsula into an excellent fishing ground. A Russian official introduced with a smile, or promoted the Kola Peninsula. Russia was planning to divide this peninsula, which has a total area of more than 100,000 square kilometers, and an area near the sea to the Lu people. Su Ming had investigated it, and it was only based on resources and environment. In other words, this peninsula is indeed excellent. The large forests and rivers have not been developed on a large scale by high technology. Many locals still maintain a relatively primitive and simple life, and there are many mineral deposits. The geographical location is also very good. You can easily reach the hinterland of Europe from both land and sea. If you want to visit the Arctic, just get on a boat and drive straight. If you want to go to Finland, it is an hour's drive from the land. However, Su Ming was not so naive that Laomazi really regarded him as his biological father. There is a reason why Russia happily agreed to divide residential areas on the peninsula. First, there are basically no Russian residents on this island. Most of the scattered towns on it are indigenous people. The status of this group of people in Russia is similar to the status of the Lur people in Iraq. They follow the instructions but not the propaganda. Basically autonomous state. Second, the peninsula is an important outlet for Russia. The headquarters of the Russian Northern Fleet is stationed at a key location on the peninsula. Under the nose of the Northern Fleet, neither the Lur people nor the local indigenous people can make any trouble. For Su Ming, neither point is actually important. He is not prepared to evade taxes, nor is he planning to rely on a few thousand Lurs to subvert Russia and go against Russia. In theory, it's a win-win. What about the gate of hell? Su Ming knocked on the table and said with a smile. "Oh, that's just a legend." The Russian official was obviously stunned for a moment, and then smiled. If there really was a gate to hell, Russia would have been occupied by the devil long ago. "Mr. Su, you don't really believe it, do you? The most famous thing on the Kola Peninsula is not reindeer, salmon, or even the Northern Fleet, but an abandoned mine called the Gate of Hell. As early as the former Soviet Union, the Soviet government discovered rich gold deposits on the Kra Peninsula and built a gold mine. After drilling to a depth of more than 9,000 meters, the drill bit penetrated a formation containing gold and diamonds. Analysis of the core taken out showed that the gold content was as high as 80 grams/ton. The gold content of ordinary gold mines is generally 4-8 grams per ton. It is almost impossible to find mineral deposits with a gold content of more than 10 grams per ton on the surface of the earth. 80 g/ton is a complete treasure of gold. In 1983, it was said that the drilling depth of the well had reached 12,000 meters, but during that year, the government suddenly stopped mining and closed the mine. The reason given to the outside world was due to insufficient funds, but insiders revealed that the real reason was some supernatural phenomena in the well. There are many different opinions about what the supernatural phenomenon is, and there is no definite answer so far. Some drilling technicians revealed to reporters that a demon came out from the bottom of the well and the drilling work had to be stopped. Some people also claimed that strange sounds came from the drilling. Researchers used high-temperature resistant recording equipment to put it into the mine and recorded a sound similar to human roar. The most mysterious one was a Finnish newspaper. A famous geologist from the former Soviet Union revealed to them that when the machine drilled a 9-mile deep hole, a monster with green face, fangs, and wings flew out of it. Later, they sent a microphone down the cave and heard a series of shrill and miserable screams, as if countless people were suffering great pain. The truth was unknown, and over time, people called this abandoned mine the Gate of Hell. The settlement allocated to the Lur people is only 5 kilometers away from the Gate of Hell. Standing on the top of the mountain, you can see the Gate of Hell. It is the closest human settlement to the Gate of Hell.